Hello, welcome to my channel or welcome back. I'm OK Savage. I make weird things and spooky things and lots of art and music and writing. Today I want to talk to you about exactly that because recently I announced that I was doing a new project and it's the second new project I've spoken about doing this year, I think. To cut a long story short, I'm not doing that project anymore and this video is going to be about why and what I'm doing instead. So both new project ideas that I came up with were designed to combine the three strands of practice that I do, which is visual arts, writing, and music. These are three things that I really love, and my idea for the projects was basically to find a way to combine these things into one big ongoing project where I could use all of these things in tandem and I wouldn't have to devote as much mental energy to figuring out how to juggle them alongside each other. I would still like to do that at some point. However, I'm not going to be doing it anytime soon. This is mostly because I started doing it and got really fed up with it really quickly. And so I've spent the last couple of weeks or so trying to figure out why and what to do about it. And I think I've made some leeway. So first of all, I had to ask myself why I was doing it in the first place. And so revisiting that, it was basically, I've been struggling to juggle doing visual arts, writing and music all consistently. They're three things that I really love doing and they sort of take care of different aspects of my mental health. For example, I find visual arts to be a really good way of expressing complicated feelings that I'm not sure about and exploring those. On two fronts, music is really good for my mental health because on one front, it can be a very communal activity and that feels very nice. Gives me a sort of sense of community when I'm doing music with other people, going to open mics, that sort of thing. And then on the other side of it, it's a really good venting exercise for me as well. I like to sort of vent big feelings into lyrics and songs that I make. And then the writing, I find that if I write regularly, it just keeps my head a lot clearer. Even though I'll be writing fiction, like a story, I find that the act of writing regularly helps me then to articulate my thoughts the rest of the time, which helps me to untangle thought patterns that are not helping me or thought patterns that I maybe need to sit down with and figure out what's going on there and where it's coming from and if this is something I want to be thinking or if this is something that maybe I want to reframe a little bit. So yeah, all three things are really good for my mental health, but in different ways. I think that's obviously why I want to be consistent with all of them. And so I think this idea of combining the three really did come from a lack of consistency with keeping up to doing all three regularly. Because what I have a habit of doing is throwing myself into one, neglecting the other two, and then switching which one it is that I'm throwing myself into at the time. Obviously, with what I've just said about how each one props up different parts of my mental health, that's not entirely helpful to do. Because it's sort of like, oh yeah, I've got a great venting strategy because I'm writing loads of songs at the moment. But also, I've got really muddled, jumbled, unhealthy thoughts because I'm not doing any writing at the moment. And so I'm not actually articulating myself in my head properly. Or, yeah, I'm being able to sort of stretch my creativity and go to some really deep places of myself with my visual arts, but also more surface level feelings that are maybe bubbling away are still bottled up because I don't have my music to just vent them out into. So doing just one at a time, it's still helpful, but I find I'm happiest and I feel most like myself when I'm keeping up to all three. But this is incredibly difficult. And so having found out why I want to combine the three, because I saw that as a way to create consistency with doing all three activities on a regular basis, the next question is, why do I find it so hard to be consistent with them in the first place? Now, this question is one that was stuck on for quite a while. You may notice actually there's like a big gap between this video upload and the last one. A lot of that is because I've been stuck on this question for ages and I've not really known how to answer it. And so Sorry. And so I had a lot of time thinking about that. And then I started watching various YouTube videos about what to do if you're in a creative slump and stuff like this, because I thought, well, maybe the fact that I'm not keeping up to doing all three activities consistently is because I'm getting blocked with one and then I'm going to the other or whatever when I'm blocked with one. And so I started watching things about, writer's block, artist block, musicians. It's always called block. They like their blocks, which is weird as well, because I always think of blocks as like building blocks, but then again, I suppose a creative block, you do build on it eventually. You usually learn something out of it when you get over it. That's such a tangent, I'm sorry. Anyway, so I started watching a lot of videos and I noticed a common theme that ran between a lot of these videos was, well, there were two common themes. One common theme was just do it, which is like, thanks, that's great, that's helpful. That's if I could do that, would I be here? But the other common theme was the idea that you're not doing things because you don't know why you're doing them or what you want to be doing with them. And I thought that was really interesting because that kind of paralleled the working that I'd already been doing with trying to figure out, why did I want to do these big projects that I was really struggling with. Obviously, I've already come up with some reasons for why I like doing the activities, but I'd not really thought about, if we were talking about it in terms of character motivations, like if you were writing a character, it's sort of like I've figured out my intrinsic motivations for why I want to do all three activities, which are things, like the fact that they make me feel certain ways and help my mental health. But I've never really sat down and thought about the extrinsic goals and motivations, or I have at points, but not kind of in a long time, aside from, oh, well, I want to make a living out of doing these things because I have very limited time and energy in my life. And so if I'm going to have the time and energy to do these things, I don't have the time and energy to build any other sort of career alongside that. And so I sort of have felt, a big goal is turning these things into my career. But that's a very vague goal. That's not that helpful. And I think that common theme that was running through a lot of videos that I was watching of like, you don't actually know where you're going with it is very true for me. I didn't really think about the particulars of like, okay, so I want to build a career out of this. What does that actually mean? What are these external goals that I'm reaching for with each of these strands of practice? And so I decided to sit down and make some lists and really think about it. And so I came up with a bunch of really big goals for where I want to see my work go in terms of the visual arts, the music, and the writing. Stuff like with the music, I'd like to have the opportunity to work with someone I admire who's not in my immediate social circle. Like get an opportunity to work with a band that I really like, or to do a soundtrack for a games company that I like that I'm not already working with. With my writing, it was stuff like, oh, I'd really like to actually finish and edit a novel, because I have finished novels before, but then I've never... I say I have finished first drafts of novels before, but the actual editing and rewriting, I've never really got to. And then sort of thinking, well, yes, I want to finish a novel. What do I want to do with that? Well, I probably want to get it published. So I've got goals like I'd like to self-publish a novel, but I'd also like to get a novel traditionally published. And I'd like to have the experience of doing that both ways. That's an experience that I'd like to have with the art. It's like I would like to have the experience of having my work shown in a gallery at some point. I'd also like to have the experience of being able to create a more sort of purposeful home studio and stuff, which is a really long-term goal, obviously, because I'd need the space to do that, which is kind of a big ask and requires definitely monetizing all of these things quite a lot. Yeah, so it's great because now I've got this list, like this of, oh, these are all the things that I want to do with these things, sort of extrinsic external goals that I'm aiming for using my internal motivation of why I love doing the craft. Again, in terms of story writing, that's really cool, because I mean, if I was writing myself as a character, I would go, okay, that's a character that's probably going to do those things then. There's going to be blocks and stuff on the way, but it's like, well, we've got the goals, we've got the motivation, they're going to go do it. And I think that's a really useful thing in terms of having those goals available to me, basically so that I can remind myself consciously and subconsciously, you know, this is what I'm doing, this is why I need the consistency, this is where I'm going with this. But some of these goals are really, really big, and I don't entirely know how to get there, or if I do know how to get there, it's sort of like it's a big journey from where I am at the moment. And so I thought, you know what I need? I need a roadmap for it. And my first thought was, okay, well, for each goal, I'll figure out the steps needed to get to that goal, break it down really, really tiny, and then write lots of lists. And then I realised that's not the most helpful way to do it, because that's just piling a lot of pressure on myself. That's sort of showing myself like, look, there's so much in between where you want to be and where you are. Also, that's a huge amount of work to do, actually figuring out all the tiny steps involved. Apart from anything, it doesn't mirror my actual processes very well, because I find that creativity usually for me isn't a linear process. My creativity goes all over the place, and it's sort of like, well, if I say, you know, for example, getting a book published, it's like I could say, these are the steps to reach that. And then what if I get halfway through, I'm not particularly keen, and I, you know, chuck it aside for a month and don't do any writing for a month because, you know, the next step is something that I don't want to do. I do struggle a lot with making myself do things if I'm not excited for them and if I don't want to do them. I need a lot of options for what I can be working on to allow me to keep moving forward. So I thought, well, a map doesn't have to be linear, actually. I'm saying, like, make a roadmap, and I'm breaking that into steps like it's one straight road, but that doesn't have to be. That's just how I've seen people create roadmaps when they've been talking about creative projects and sort of stuff in the past. What if I made a map that allowed for a less linear way of working? And so that's exactly what I did. I started with a little house for each creative aspect of myself to live in. So there's a little house for the artist, a little house for the musician, a little house for the writer. So that's where they're starting, that's where they live. And then I thought, where are they going? Well, they're going towards these really big goals. And I thought, big goals, that's like, what does that conjure in my head? That conjures like a big city, maybe. Like maybe they're starting in this tiny little house and they want to make it to the big city where there's bright lights and excitement and everything. So that's great. I've got what the creative practices are, which is the houses. I've got where they're going, which is the big city, or well, the three big cities that they're each going to. And then what have I got in between? Well, the road, right? But not just the road, because I'm not starting from scratch. I'm not saying like I have to, you know, start at the start of this one straight road. That's going back to the linear aspect again. There's lots of things in between where I am and where I'm trying to get to. And so I broke it down a little bit more. I broke it down into things that are sort of a little bit out of reach, but I kind of know, I know that they're things that I need to do to get to the goals that live in this big city. So all of the things that are a little bit out of reach are going to take a lot of effort. They're sort of on the road directly before the big city. But then a step back from that, there's the hometown, which is things that I do know how to do, things that I've maybe done in the past, or places that I can really imagine, you know, like, oh, I've walked past this library 100 times. I know what that building is. So that's the hometown. A step back from that is the back garden, which is activities that I can do that will push me towards this progress, but are very easy, simple activities that I'm already confident in, and they're sort of as easy as, you know, walking out of the back door and going and watering the roses. And then I thought there's something missing. And the one thing that was missing then was sometimes I don't want to do any of these. Sometimes I do genuinely get blocked with stuff. And that's where I think I needed somewhere to inspire me, somewhere where I could put activities that I can do that are creative and inspiring and make me feel joyful about my work. And so for me, the metaphor for that comes up immediately is like walking through the woods. Very magical sort of place, somewhere where you're always going to find something new and maybe learn something about yourself. And so that's where I put those activities, is in the woods. And so with all these different activities listed as being in these different sort of places, I made the map. I made a visual map to explain to myself where I was going and all the things that I could do to get there.
You're not like the rest, but you're trying to change. Hands up, head down, cross your heart, don't show your frown. Hands up, head down, pose a smile, don't make a sound. Hands up, head down, cross your heart.
I've intentionally not drawn the big city. I want to add bits to it when I get there. The big city is things that I don't know what they're like yet, and I'm looking forward to getting to add them to the map as and when I find out. So yeah, that's my map for creativity. Feel absolutely free to steal this idea because I'm really happy with it, and I've already found it's really helping me be more consistent with keeping up to all of my different creative practices. Hopefully, now that I've got through all the internal quandaries that I was facing, we'll get back to regular video uploads. I don't know if I can promise weekly at the moment because it's very, very busy this next couple of months. Life is busy. But yeah, you can expect minimum like every couple of weeks uploads showing whatever creative stuff I've been up to, which will hopefully be lots and lots. Before I go, I'd like to say if you're watching this on Patreon, thank you so much. You help so much. If you're watching this on YouTube a week after, thank you for watching. It's amazing. Please like and subscribe and everything. And if you do want to see future videos a little bit early, you can head over to the Patreon page. There's also loads of other stuff there. It's very fun. Thanks very much. It's been lovely talking to you. Have a good one. Take care.